71 years ago today, and we're commemorating his 71st, anniversary. Yes, that's the word that I'm looking for. His 71st anniversary. So, Ndumiso, let's take it from the top then. Who was Anton Lembede? What should we know about him?
Bongani, firstly, kindly allow me to call on all South Africans, in particular young South Africans, to pledge solidarity with the young Mqebo Dlamini, who today is facing trial in court for having fought for free education, which is one of the ideals Muziwake Anton Lembede fought for, which is of access of the African child to higher education. Today we are commemorating 71 years after the death of one of the greatest young revolutionaries to ever live and work on African soil, Comrade Muziwake Anton Lembede. Comrade Anton Lembede was not only a young revolutionary or the first president of the ANC Youth League, he was an intellectual in his own right, he was a skillful young professional, a lawyer, and he was the founding father or an immense contributor to the ideology of African nationalism. Comrade Lembede, as you said earlier, today we're not speaking about him to bask in the glory of the past or to blackmail people that the ANC League is a glorious formation or produces glorious people. But we are speaking about President Lembede such that we are able to learn from his life. How did he influence the fight for freedom? What culture did he bring to the organization as president, as an activist? And most important, how do we strive to emulate him as a generation?
Yeah.
There are a few things which I want to pick on about President Lembede. The first one is that President Lembede was a committed activist and an academic. At the tender age of 33, when President Lembede passed on, he already had a master's degree and was reading for his postgraduate degree. Already had an LLB. He was a young professional. President Lembede was a very skillful and dedicated lawyer who could articulate law in many different languages. There are two instances come out for me. Is one when he broke in a court in Roodepoort and decided to address the court in Afrikaans. In the early 1940s, a young black lawyer addressing a court in Afrikaans, showing his understanding of the law, interpreting it in Afrikaans. The magistrate was extremely shocked. A second one is when he broke and addressed the court in Latin. The magistrate was extremely shocked to levels where he said, "No, but I don't think this is a court in Rome." That's how impressive this young man was.
Yeah.
Anton Lembede was also an epitome of excellence. He believed so much in excellence such that there's a funny story which his friend Apim Dar writes about. He says that he believed in excellence such that he even believed that the partner you marry must be a resemblance of excellence. That is why at some point he read about on a newspaper about a nurse who had received awards in Lesotho. And he borrowed the bicycle of the friend and took a ride to Lesotho to go and look for that woman and wanted to marry her just because she was an excellent achiever.
But what's important about him in his in influence and crafting of this African nationalism, he had to look at the Afrikaner nationalism and be influenced by that and be interested by that. That's why then he pushed that. How important is that moment in the history of Anton Lembede?
That moment is extremely important, not only in the history of Anton Lembede, but it changed the outlook of South African politics. You would know that the African nationalism, which Anton Lembede spoke of and crafted and contributed immensely to it as a body of knowledge, is what inspired the resurgence, the emerging of parties like the PAC later in the 50s. In the main, they were inspired by President Anton Lembede. It is what inspired the ANC Youth League to grow impatient with the methods of struggle of the then leadership of the ANC, because we felt that the old people at the time were not reimagining the world as how Lembede told us to reimagine the world and think of a new African order. So that moment was extremely important, and it remained a guiding ideology for the African National Congress for a very long time. It contributed to how the ANC looked at society. When Mo Mandela appeared in court in the Rivonia trial, when he explained what does African nationalism mean and how is it important for Africans to own the means of production in their country, that those thoughts and thinking were largely influenced by this great young man who passed on at the tender age of 33, Anton Lembede.
He protected this concept of Africanism almost with his life, because if you read, you'll find that himself with Walter Sisulu and Oliver Tambo almost succeeded in persuading the Transvaal Congress to expel the communists, because the communists were seen to be attacking this concept of Africanism.
It was, yes, indeed. He was a very staunch supporter of Africanism, and later this Africanism is properly explained by his friend A.P. Mda when after his funeral and after he passes on. He says that our Africanism was not hatred towards white people in the main, but it was hatred for white domination. We wanted Africans to liberate themselves from the chains of colonialism, from the chains of domination by white people. And you would recall that at the time, when they fought against what was perceived to be a fight against the Communist Party. In the main, it was a fight against a large influence of leading parties of the SACP, leaders of the SACP, which were some of them which were white. It was not necessarily against the South African Communist Party. And of course, they had a problem with the ideology of Marxism. Those, when you read history, you will know of a fellow called David Pupape, who was in the first NEC of the ANC Youth League and was a left and a Marxist thinker who history records as having endless debates with Anton Lembede and A.P. Mda on the correctness of Marxism, but of course of not just importing it into the ANC Youth League or into South Africa, but making sure that it works to liberate Africans in particular and blacks in general.
0891 104 207 is the number to call if you want to participate in this discussion. Today marks the 71st anniversary of Anton Lembede. He was born in KZN and he moved to Emapepeteni, by the way, Mbumbulu. That's so we are kind of like related with him. So, but how did he influence the politics of the ANC as a young person in 1944, thereabout 45, and so on? Because it was important for young people to play a critical role then, as it is important today for yourselves, the ANC Youth League, to influence the direction of the mother body.
Anton Lembede, one of Anton Lembede's contribution to the ANC Youth League is the founding manifesto of the ANC Youth League. It is that manifesto that speaks of the Youth League that we want. It is that manifesto that speaks of the society which the ANC Youth League had imagined. And that is the work of Anton Lembede. It was Anton Lembede who, when writing in 1947 for Inkundla Zabantu, he writes a very profound article. He says that we want young people, we are not called to enjoyment. We are called to struggle. We want young people who have got moral stamina, young people with the highest moral authority, young people with energy, young people who are committed to the revolutionary cause. That really influenced. And that generation, the 1944 generation of the ANC Youth League, which was largely influenced by Anton Lembede in thinking, distinguished themselves as revolutionaries, most importantly, who placed the people's cause above everything else and never attempted to betray it at any moment, no matter how difficult the moments were. The courage Mandela had when they appeared, when they conducted the Defiance campaign, the courage they had when they appeared in the Rivonia trial, and most of it came from that generation of Anton Lembede, how they influenced it. One moment in history where they played a very significant role, where they showed that a united young people who are disciplined, critical in thinking, cannot be defeated, was in a conference of the ANC when they took it in the early 1940s, where the ANC was discussing whether to participate in these local councils, which were then designed by the apartheid regime.
All right.
And Lembede and his team did very well, and to such a point that the ANC itself started being critical of that position of participating in apartheid designed local councils.
Samkelo, you are in Umlazi, eThekwini. Good morning to you, Samkelo. I'm fine, thank you very much. Yes, please.